The scariest thing about the DMZ wasn't what you could see, it was what you couldn't. They sent me to Korea in 1967, not Vietnam, Korea. Most guys my age were getting drafted and shipped to the jungle. I enlisted, asked for infantry, and the Marine Corps sent me to the most forgotten front line in the world. The demilitarized zone, 4 kilometers of no man's land between North and South Korea. Been there since the armistice in '53, and nobody back home even remembered we were still there. Still on a war footing. Still patrolling. Still dying. Yeah, dying. You didn't hear about it on the news because it wasn't officially a war, just incidents, provocations, infiltrations, but tell that to the Marines who came back in body bags. My name is Lance Corporal Mike Sullivan, 20 years old, from Detroit. Grew up watching war movies, hearing stories about World War II from my old man. Thought I knew what war was. Thought it was big battles, clear enemies, fighting for something that mattered. The DMZ taught me different. I was assigned to a rifle company at Camp Liberty Bell, right on the southern edge of the Z. Our job was to patrol the fence line, watch for infiltrators, respond to probes. The North Koreans were always testing us, always probing for weak spots, trying to sneak through, trying to provoke incidents. It wasn't like Vietnam. No big sweeps, no search and destroy missions, no helicopters coming in with reinforcements. Just small unit patrols in the dark, watching a strip of land covered in mines and wire, waiting for something to happen. The veterans who'd been there a while, they had this look. Not the 1,000-yard stare you see in photos. Something else. A kind of constant tension. Like they were always listening for something just beyond hearing, always watching for movement in the corner of their eye. "You'll understand after your first patrol," one of them told me. Corporal Jackson from Georgia, 3 months left on his tour. The Z gets in your head. Makes you see things, hear things, makes you crazy. I didn't believe him then. My first night patrol was in October 1967. 6-man team moving along the fence line in complete darkness. No moon, no lights, just the sound of wind through the wire and our own breathing. That's when I learned what he meant. The DMZ doesn't need to kill you to destroy you. The waiting does that all by itself. Night patrols started at 2200 hours. 6 Marines, blackened faces, no talking above a whisper. We'd check our gear, rifles, grenades, radio, then slip through the gate into the Z. The first thing that hits you is the silence. Complete, absolute silence. No insects, no birds, no animals. Everything alive learned to stay away from the DMZ. Only humans were stupid enough to go out there. Well, humans and the mines. The Z was covered in mines. Ours, theirs, old ones from the war that nobody remembered planting. You stayed on the patrol paths, followed the routes marked safe, and even then you weren't sure. Mine maps get lost. Mines migrate when the ground shifts. Step wrong and you're gone. We moved in a column, 5 meters between each man. Close enough to see the Marine in front of you, far enough that one mine wouldn't get everyone. I was third in the column that first night, behind Corporal Jackson and a guy named Williams. The fence ran north-south, 8 feet high, covered in concertina wire. Watchtowers every few hundred meters, manned by guys with night vision and machine guns. We were the mobile element, checking for breaches, looking for signs of infiltration. 30 minutes into the patrol, Jackson raised his fist. We all froze. He pointed ahead. I looked but saw nothing, just darkness and the fence line stretching away. Then I heard it, a sound, metal on metal, faint, maybe 100 meters ahead. Someone was cutting the fence. Jackson got on the radio, whispered a contact report. We waited for orders. My heart was hammering so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. My hands were slick with sweat on my rifle. The sound stopped. Maybe they heard us. Maybe they were through and moving. Orders came back. Advance and investigate. Do not engage unless fired upon. Do not cross the fence line. Rules of engagement, even out here in the dark with someone cutting through our wire. We move forward, slower now, every step careful, every sound amplified in the silence. I could hear Williams breathing ahead of me, could hear my own blood rushing in my ears. 50 meters from where we'd heard the sound, Jackson raised his fist again. We froze. There was a gap in the fence, fresh cut, wire peeled back. Someone had come through. Could be they'd already crossed south. Could be they were still in the Z, watching us, waiting. Could be they'd left something behind. Mines, booby traps. The North Koreans were good at that. Jackson motioned 2 men to check the breach. The rest of us formed a perimeter, watching the darkness, rifles ready. Every shadow could be an enemy. Every sound could be movement. The 2 Marines reached the fence, started examining the cut. That's when the flare went up. Bright white light turning night into day, launched from the north side of the Z. We were exposed, silhouetted against the fence line. Perfect targets. And then the shooting started. Machine gun fire from the north, bullets snapping through the air, ricocheting off the fence posts. We hit the ground, returned fire into the darkness beyond the flare light. Couldn't see what we were shooting at, just muzzle flashes in the distance. The 2 Marines at the fence were pinned down. One of them was hit. I could hear him screaming. William started crawling toward them. Jackson was on the radio calling for support, for illumination, for anything. Another flare went up, then another. The North Koreans were lighting up the whole sector. They wanted us to see, wanted us to know they were watching, wanted us to feel exposed. More gunfire, not just machine guns now, rifles, maybe a dozen shooters on the north side. We were outnumbered and trapped in the open. The patrol path we'd followed in was now a killing ground. "Pull back!" Jackson shouted. "Everybody back to the gate!" Williams had reached the wounded Marine, was dragging him back toward us. The other Marine at the fence was providing covering fire, burning through magazines, buying time. I was shooting at shadows, at muzzle flashes, at nothing. Just pulling the trigger because that's what you do, because staying frozen means dying. Our watchtowers opened up, heavy machine guns pouring fire across the fence line. Tracers cutting through the darkness, red lines of death. The North Koreans stopped shooting, pulled back, disappeared into their side of the Z. Just like that, it was over. Maybe 2 minutes of contact, felt like hours. We got back to the gate, did a head count. 5 of us made it. The wounded Marine, kid named Peterson from Iowa, he'd taken a round through the thigh, bleeding bad but alive. The 6th Marine, the one who'd been covering at the fence, we had to go back for him. Turned out he was dead. Caught a burst in the first seconds of the firefight. Died at the fence while the rest of us were pulling back. His name was Rodriguez, from California, 19 years old, 3 months in country. First KIA I'd ever seen up close. He looked small, smaller than he'd been alive, just a kid in a uniform, lying in Korean dirt, dead in a war that wasn't a war. They called it an incident. Went in the reports as a DMZ provocation. Rodriguez went home in a box, and the news back in the States never mentioned it. Just another forgotten casualty in a forgotten conflict. But that wasn't the horror. The horror came later. We kept patrolling, every night. Same routine. Check the fence, watch for infiltrations, wait for something to happen. And every night I'd think about Rodriguez, about how quickly it happened. 1 second he's alive, next second he's not. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. And I realized that's what the DMZ does to you. It's not the combat. Combat is quick, sharp, over. It's the waiting between. The walking through the dark, knowing that any second could be your last. Any step could be a mine. Any shadow could be an infiltrator with a knife. Any moment could bring gunfire from across the fence. You can't relax, can't let your guard down. Ever. Because the Z is always watching, always waiting, always ready to kill you for the smallest mistake. After a month of patrols, I started seeing things. Movement that wasn't there. Hearing sounds that didn't exist. Waking up from nightmares about walking into mines, about Rodriguez dying, about being left behind at the fence. Jackson had been right. The Z gets in your head, makes you crazy. And I still had 11 months left on my tour. Winter came, made everything worse. The DMZ in winter is brutal. Temperatures dropping below zero, wind cutting through your gear, fingers going numb on your rifle. Night patrols became exercises in not freezing to death while watching for infiltrators who probably weren't even there. But sometimes they were. December 67, we had a probe on the eastern sector. North Korean commando team, maybe 20 men, cut through the fence and pushed south. Got into a firefight with a Marine patrol, killed 2 Marines, wounded 3 more, then disappeared back across the line. The brass went crazy. Increased patrols, tightened security, put everyone on high alert, which meant more nights in the Z, more walking through the dark, more waiting for something to happen. I was on my 3rd month. The new guys looked to me like I was a veteran, but I didn't feel like a veteran. Felt like I was barely holding it together. The constant tension, the lack of sleep, the grinding routine of patrol after patrol after patrol, it wore you down in ways combat never could. At least in combat, something happens. You fight, you win or lose, it's over. But the DMZ, nothing ever happened, except when it did, and then it was too late. We lost another Marine in January, not to gunfire, to a mine. He stepped 6 inches off the marked path, and that was it. Stepped on a mine that had been there since the Korean War, buried for 15 years waiting. His name was Cooper, from Tennessee. Didn't die right away. The mine took his legs but left him conscious. We had to listen to him scream while we waited for the medevac. Had to watch him bleed out because we couldn't reach him. Couldn't go to him without risking more mines. He died before the helicopter arrived. They ruled it an accident, not combat-related. His family got a letter saying he died in service of his country, but no Purple Heart, because stepping on a mine in a demilitarized zone doesn't count as combat. Tell that to Cooper. The patrols continued every night. Every night into the darkness, into the Z, waiting for something terrible to happen. Some nights nothing did. Some nights we'd hear sounds, see movement, report contact that may or may not have been real. We started taking pills, bennies to stay awake on patrol, sleeping pills to crash afterward, anything to manage the grinding exhaustion of constant alertness. The corpsmen looked the other way. They knew we couldn't function without them. I stopped writing letters home. What was I supposed to say? Dear Mom, I'm walking through minefields in the dark, watching for North Koreans who might not exist. How do you explain the DMZ to someone who's never been there? How do you make them understand that you can die in a war that isn't a war? 6 months in, I was hollow, going through the motions. Patrol, sleep, patrol, sleep. Waiting for my tour to end or for the Z to kill me, whichever came first. Didn't much care which anymore. I broke in March of '68. Routine patrol, nothing special. 6-man team, standard route, checking the fence line. Cold night, clear sky, good visibility, everything by the book. We were maybe an hour into the patrol when I started hearing voices. Not real voices. I knew they weren't real, but I could hear them anyway. Whispers in Korean coming from the north side of the fence. Movement in the shadows. Figures that weren't there. I didn't say anything. Kept walking. Kept watching. Tried to ignore what my brain was showing me. Then I saw Rodriguez. He was standing at the fence, right where he died, looking at me, not moving, just standing there. I froze, stared at him. He was real as anything I'd ever seen. Could see his face, his uniform, the wounds that had killed him. Sullivan, Jackson's voice behind me. "What's wrong?" I blinked. Rodriguez was gone, just the fence and the darkness. "Nothing," I said. "Thought I saw something." But I hadn't thought I saw something. I had seen something. Rodriguez, clear as day, dead for 5 months, and I'd seen him. We finished the patrol, got back to base. I went to my bunk and lay there staring at the ceiling, knowing I was losing my mind. The next patrol I saw him again. And Cooper. Both of them standing in the Z, watching me. Followed me the whole patrol. Every time I looked back, they were there. I told Jackson. Had to. Couldn't keep patrolling like this. Couldn't function. He got me to the battalion surgeon. Navy doctor. Looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe I was. "Combat fatigue," he said. Gave me some pills. Told me to take a few days off from patrols. But I wasn't in combat. That was the problem. I was in a war that wasn't a war, dying deaths that didn't count, watching ghosts of Marines who'd been erased from history. They gave me 5 days to pull myself together, then back to the patrols, because the DMZ doesn't care if you're broken. It needs bodies, and you're a body. I made it to May. 7 months in country, 5 months to go. Every patrol seeing dead Marines in the shadows, every step wondering if it would be my last. Every moment waiting for the Z to finally claim me. Then they pulled our unit out, sent us south for training, then to Vietnam. The war was heating up. They needed experienced infantry. The DMZ could make do with fewer Marines. I should have been relieved. Getting out of the Z, going somewhere where at least the war was acknowledged. But all I felt was numb. Vietnam would be worse. I knew that. But at least in Vietnam, when you died, people would know, would remember, would count you. The DMZ just swallows you up and pretends you never existed. They're recording this in 1969, 2 years since I first set foot in the DMZ, 1 year since I left. I'm at a VA hospital in California. They call it psychiatric evaluation. I call it trying to figure out if I'm actually crazy or if the DMZ made me crazy. After Korea, they sent me to Vietnam, Khe Sanh, Hue, places that became household names. Real combat, real war, firefights, artillery, medevacs, the whole 9 yards. And you know what? It was easier than the DMZ. In Vietnam, at least you knew who the enemy was, knew what you were fighting for, even if it didn't make much sense. Knew that your service mattered, that people back home were watching, that your death would be counted. The DMZ had none of that. Just darkness and waiting and the slow erosion of your sanity. I got wounded at Hue, shrapnel in my back and leg, Purple Heart, medical evacuation, end of my war. They patched me up, sent me stateside, gave me an honorable discharge. Should have been the end of it. Come home, heal up, move on with life. But the DMZ came home with me. I still see Rodriguez, still see Cooper. Not all the time, but enough. Enough to know that part of my brain broke in Korea and never healed. Enough to know I'm not the same person who enlisted in 1967. The nightmares are worse than what I saw in Vietnam. Always the same dream, walking through the Z at night, knowing I'm about to step on a mine, unable to stop myself. I wake up right as my foot comes down. Some nights I don't wake up, just keep walking, keep stepping, die in the dream, then wake up later, surprised to still be alive. The doctors say it's post-traumatic stress. Say a lot of guys coming back from Vietnam have it. They give me pills, therapy, group sessions with other veterans. It helps, sort of. But none of them understand the DMZ. They understand combat, understand firefights and ambushes and watching friends die. But the DMZ isn't combat. It's psychological warfare. It's the space between war and peace where you lose your mind slowly, patrol by patrol, night by night. I tried explaining it to a therapist once. Tried to describe what it's like to walk through darkness for months, waiting for death that might never come, dying in ways that don't count, being forgotten while you're still breathing. She nodded, took notes, didn't understand. How could she? How could anyone who wasn't there? The guys I served with in the Z, we don't talk about it. Some of them are still there, still patrolling, still waiting. Some got out, scattered across the country. We don't have reunions, don't keep in touch, because what would we say? Remember that time we walked through the dark and nothing happened? But Rodriguez remembers. Cooper remembers. All the Marines who died in incidents that weren't incidents. In a war that wasn't a war, remember? They're the only ones who do. I'm 22 years old. Got my whole life ahead of me, the doctors say. The war's behind me. Time to move forward, build a future, live a normal life. But part of me is still in the Z, still patrolling the fence line in the dark, still watching for shadows that might be enemies or might be ghosts or might be nothing at all. Still waiting for the mine I'm going to step on, the bullet that's going to find me, the moment the Z finally claims what it's owed. Korea was supposed to be over in 1953. The shooting stopped. The line was drawn. Peace, they called it. But there's no peace in the DMZ. Just waiting. Just watching. Just dying in ways nobody remembers. The scariest thing about the DMZ wasn't what you could see. It was what you couldn't see. What you'd never see again once it took you. I got out, but the DMZ never let me go.